Part 10. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbo. Chapter 91. Ruo Hung fights with the female ghost. Ruo Hung has a strong figure and dances like a tiger with a long whip in her hand. That long whip should be Ruo Hung's magic weapon. I don't know much about the actor's profession, and I don't know much about their methods of exorcising ghosts. Although Ruo Hung's offensive was fierce, the ghost mother obviously had the upper hand. I activated the ghost seal, and the aura of ghosts emitted from my body. I shouted to the ghost mother, "Stop." The ghost mother stopped what she was doing after she felt the power of the ghost in me. Ruo Hung quickly distanced herself from him and came to my side. The ghost mother looked at me, stunned for a moment, and then her eyes were full of hatred. "It's you. I didn't expect you to be a ghost." I protected Ruo Hung behind me, holding a peachwood sword, looking at the ghost mother coldly, and said, "You disrupt the order of the yin and yang worlds. I feel sorry for you. I will give you a chance to leave with me. Otherwise, I will definitely call you. You will be reduced to ashes. If you activate the ghost seal, you will gain the power of ghosts, although this power can only act as a deterrent. But it will give me great courage. This is the benefit of ghost marks." The ghost mother looked at me with a malicious expression, and she said word by word, it was you who killed my child. I will kill you to avenge my child." The resentment on the ghost mother was even heavier than when I first met her. I think it was the result of being separated from my own children. "Your child didn't die, he just went to the underworld," the ghost mother roared. "I do not care." Suddenly, there was a strong wind in the living room, which overturned the furniture. "It's you who caused me to be separated from my child. I'm going to kill you. Kill you." I sighed secretly in my heart. Why is this ghost's identity just like a decoration here? Why isn't the other person afraid at all? I think it's because of my own strength. The ghost mother's jet black hair grew crazily, and in an instant it became like a tidal wave and came towards me. Ruo Hung pulled me and said, "Your injury hasn't healed yet, let me do it." I shook my head and said, "I'll give it a try. To be honest, I am not completely sure in my heart. The ghost mother has too much resentment and is still much weaker than the blood evil. But my ability to eliminate the blood evil was entirely a fluke. There was no thunder to trigger for me today. However, the Jingxiao in my hand gave me some confidence. The tide of black hair came to me in an instant. I waved the Jingxiao in my hand and cut off the black hair. I was slightly stunned. This Jingxiao was so powerful, it was worthy of being struck by lightning for 100 years. The black hair was cut off and continued to grow crazily. These hairs are really troublesome. I can't cut off these hairs and then deal with the ghost mother, right? In this case, it would consume too much for me. So, I took steps and ran around the ghost mother, waving the Jingxiao in my hand. It's impossible for me to kill the ghost mother because I don't have the strength. I need to find an opportunity to use thunder technique, seriously injure the ghost mother and then think of a way. The tidal wave of hair was attacking me crazily, and I could only resist it with my sword. But there was too much hair and it was impossible to cut it off. "Lusu!" Ruo Hung suddenly shouted to me. I followed the sound and saw her wink at me. I understood and put away my surprise. I held the seal in my right hand and silently recited the 9 layers of thunder in my heart. Blue lightning flashed in my palm, and I rushed towards the ghost mother regardless. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbo. Chapter 92. Rushing over in this situation is tantamount to seeking death. But why I am so determined is entirely because I believe in Ruo Hung. Black hair like a tide came towards me, but I turned a blind eye and kept running towards the ghost mother. Just when the black hair was about to grab my ankle, there was a sudden sound of breaking through the air. The next moment, the long black hair stagnated and could no longer move forward. I know that it was Ruo Hung who took action. The ghost mother was attracted by this sudden change. It was this moment of distraction that gave me an opportunity. I stacked the first one of the 9 layers of thunder to the full. Thunder and lightning flashed in my palms, and there were bursts of thunder in my ears. The principle of 9 layers thunder Jew is the same as that of palm thunder. However, the power of the 9 layers thunder Jew can be superimposed, but the palm thunder cannot. The ghost mother felt the dangerous aura, turned around suddenly, and wanted to resist, but it was already too late. The 9-fold thunderbolt hit the ghost mother firmly. There was a bang, thunder and lightning exploded, and blue arcs spread crazily on the ghost mother's body. Ah! The ghost mother let out a shrill scream and was knocked away by me. Ruohung pulled back the long whip that bound the ghost mother's hair. Just now, Ruohung used a long whip to restrain the ghost mother's tidal hair. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to hit the ghost mother. Although this blow cannot destroy the ghost mother, it can still make it suffer a little. Now there is another problem before me, that is, after performing the 9 layers of thunder art, I feel completely exhausted. This is because of poor physical strength. If you have stronger physical strength, you won't feel tired. Ruohung looked at me with white lips and asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" I waved my hand and said, "I'm fine." The ghost mother's miserable howl echoed in the empty villa. She struggled to stand up and looked at me with vicious eyes. At this time, the ghost mother was in an extremely embarrassed state. Her body was affected by the thunderbolt, her skin and flesh were torn apart, and the exposed flesh and blood was not bright red, but black and burnt. I'll kill you. Kill you. I held Jingxiao in my hand and looked at the ghost mother coldly. The ghost mother bared her teeth and claws and rushed towards me again. Just when I was about to raise my sword to meet the enemy, a figure suddenly ran out of the darkness and fell into the ghost mother's arms. "Kid. That's enough. That's enough. Mom doesn't want to see you hurt anymore." The person who came was none other than Xia's mother, who I knocked unconscious. Xia's mother hugged Gui's mother tightly, with tears in her eyes. Gui's mother looked slightly stunned and looked at her mother, who was holding her. Her eyes were a little confused. Xia's mother still cried, "My child. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If it weren't for my mother, you wouldn't be like this." Ghost mother looked at Xia mother and asked with a trembling voice, "Mom, when did you know that I?" Mother Xia raised her head, stretched out her hand, caressed Mother Ghost's cheek, and said, "Mom knew you were dead the first time she saw you." The ghost mother looked at Xia's mother in disbelief. She couldn't understand why she could still see the truth of the matter clearly when she blindfolded her mother. Mother Xia bit her lip lightly and said, "Yan Yan, Mother knows that you long for family and family. It's your mother's fault that she couldn't give you all this when you were alive. If someone has to die before you can let go of your hatred, then Mom is willing to die." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 93. Now, I don't understand why Xia Yan longs for family affection so much. But then Xia 11 told me everything. Xia Yan longs for family affection, very much. Xia's mother and father were busy with work since she was a child, so she was brought up by her grandmother. Her parents were absent throughout her childhood. There is a reason why Xia Yan's parents are so busy. The Xia family's business began to decline after Xia Yan was born. That period was when the Xia family was at its most depressed. In order to maintain the Xia family's business, the husband and wife can only work together. The Xia family's business picked up after Xia 11 was born. Therefore, Xia 11's parents were not absent during her childhood, and she also had a sister who loved her very much. After that, Xia Yan married Wang Lin under the arrangement of her parents. But Xia Yan didn't like Wang Lin, but she agreed because of her parents' arrangements. She once longed for vigorous love, but she lost to reality. Since the Xia family has no male sons, only a son-in-law can continue the Xia family's legacy. So the two got married, and after the marriage, Xia Yan began to accept Wang Lin. The relationship between the two cannot be said to be love, but can only be said to be a family affection accumulated over time. However, no one thought that Wang Lin was just a wolf in sheep's clothing. In order to get the family property, he teamed up with Suluo to kill her and the child in her belly. Sometimes, Xia Yan, as an older sister, envies her younger sister. Because my sister has been loved by her parents since she was a child, she doesn't need to worry about family matters when she grows up. Envy is envy. Xia Yan has never been jealous of her sister. She loves Xia 11 very much, very much. Xia Yan repays the world with kindness. But the world gave her tragedy in return. Xia's mother looked at her daughter with tears streaming down her face. Yan Yan, it's my mother who is sorry for you. If I could have discovered Wang Lin's true face earlier, you would not have died. Xia Yan looked at her mother, and the resentment in her body was slowly dissipating. I felt happy when I saw this scene. Xia Yan's resentment had dissipated, which meant that she was very likely to be reincarnated. Mom, I don't blame you. If you want to blame me, you can only blame me for my misfortune. Xia's mother stretched out her hand, gently touched Xia Yan's pale face, and said, "My child, let go of your obsession and reincarnate. Mom will accompany you." Saying that, Xia's mother took out a fruit knife and stabbed her chest without any hesitation. Just when the sharp fruit knife was about to pierce her heart, Xia Yan stopped her. "Mom! What are you doing?" Xia Yan shouted to her mother. "Mom just doesn't want you to leave alone. Mom can't bear to leave you." Xia's mother held her head and cried, her voice choked with sobs. "Mom can't let you go. Mom really can't let you go. I've been absent from your entire childhood. At least you will be with your mother after you leave this world, so you won't be too lonely." Xia Yan's resentment slowly dissipated, and her appearance was also changing. After a moment, the ferocious ghost mother disappeared and was replaced by a gentle and generous woman. "Mom, my daughter can't let go of you, just like I can't let go of my child." In addition to being unable to let go of family ties, she also couldn't let go of her own children. The reason why Xia Yan became like this was entirely because she was separated from her child. The two demons, the son and the mother, cannot be separated. If they are separated, the ghost mother will be filled with resentment and cruelty. However, Xia Yan did not kill all her family members. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 94. It is very likely that for Xia Yan, her only enemies are Wang Lin and Suluo. No matter how deep her grievances were, she always cared about her family in her heart. Otherwise, it would be impossible to imprison everyone here. It is also possible that after Xia Yan killed Wang Lin and Suluo, the resentment in her heart was not so heavy. The only source of resentment is her child. "Child, you." Xia's mother looked at her daughter blankly. Xia Yan smiled tenderly at her mother and said, "Mom, you can't bear to leave me, but Xiao 11 can't live without you. Don't worry, I will be reincarnated." She looked at me, came to me, and said respectfully to me, "Master Gazeo, I am willing to leave, but before leaving, I have a request." "Ask." "What request?" "It must be about her child." Sure enough, Xia Yan said to me, "I want to see my child again." I don't know if I can fulfill Xia Yan's request. After all, the ghost baby had been taken to the underworld by Xiang Yi. I said to Xia Yan, "I don't know if your child is still in the underworld. He may have been reincarnated." Hearing these words, Xia Yan's face showed a look of disappointment. I changed the subject and said, "But I can ask you a question. If the ghost baby, like Xia Yan, remembers his mother and refuses to reincarnate, there is still a chance for mother and son to meet each other. Xia Yan quickly thanked me, and I activated the ghost seal to see if I could call Xiangyi out. But after a while, Xiangyi didn't come out, but I summoned a dark door. I was shocked. Is this the door to the underworld? I heard from Xiangyi before that it can be summoned through the power of ghost seals. Xia Yan looked at me in confusion when she saw that I summoned the gate to the underworld. I coughed awkwardly, not knowing how to explain it. At this moment, the dark wind rushed out from the door, and Xiangyi slowly walked out. The first thing he said when he saw me was, "You are so good at finding trouble. I'm not on duty today, so you still want me to work overtime?" The corners of my mouth twitched slightly. My behavior was indeed a bit annoying. After Xiangyi complained about me, she then looked at Xia Yan, whose resentment had dissipated. He said to me, "What's going on?" I told Xiangyi what had just happened and Xia Yan's request word for word. The latter nodded after listening and said, "That kid is still lingering in the underworld and refuses to leave." After hearing these words, I felt happy. Since I refused to leave, it happened that the mother and son would meet and then be reincarnated together. Xiangyi glanced at Xia Yan, who was so frightened that she quickly shrank her neck. This is the gap. Although I am a ghost agent, the sense of oppression I bring to Li Gui is far less than that of Xiangyi. Wait for me here. After saying that, Xiangyi walked into the gate of the underworld. About 5 minutes later, Xiangyi came back, followed by a little boy. The ghost baby is much older than the last time I saw him. But the resentment on his body did not diminish at all, and his eyes were still so vicious when he saw me. After Xia Yan saw the ghost baby, her expression became a little excited, and regardless of the fear of Xiangyi in her heart, she rushed to the ghost baby and picked him up. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 95. The ghost baby was killed by Suluo and Wang Lin when it was still in Xia Yan's belly. Therefore, the mother and son have never met. But the bond of blood thicker than water will never be severed, and will only wrap around the mother and son tightly as time goes by. Child. Xia Yan hugged the ghost baby and shouted excitedly. When Guiying saw Xia Yan, his resentment slowly dissipated. He opened his mouth and said inarticulately, "Mom." Xia Yan agreed and hugged the ghost baby happily. She glanced at her mother, and then said, "Mom, my daughter is gone, you must live well. Maybe we will meet again in the next life. At that time, I will take him to accompany you again." Around. Xia's mother looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. She also saw her grandson. How great it would be if both of them were still alive. "Okay. Mom is waiting for you." Xia Yan smiled tenderly at her mother, then looked at me, bowed deeply and said, "Thank you." I waved my hand and said nothing. Xia Yan took one last look at her mother, her eyes full of reluctance. "But no matter how reluctant I am to leave, I will eventually leave." She held the ghost baby and walked into the gate of the underworld. Xiangyi came to me and said, "For the sake of your performance, I won't care if you call me here." I smiled awkwardly, and Xiangyi snorted coldly and said, "Remember, you can't delay the ghost money. I will ask you to pick it up in a few days. I'm afraid this Yi is not in the eyes of money. Be sure to mention this matter every time you meet." "Okay, I get it." Xiangyi was stopped by me just as she was about to walk into the gate of the underworld. "Master Xiang, there is a ghost in this villa." Xiangyi was stunned and began to feel it. Sure enough, he felt the presence of a ghost under a table. He stepped forward, directly lifted Wang Lin out, and then threw Wang Lin into the gate of the underworld. His actions were crude and callous. How could I forget about a person like Wang Lin who has committed such heinous crimes? "Okay, I'm leaving." After that, he walked into the gate of the underworld. The door to the underworld slowly closed, and everything returned to calm. I looked at Xia's mother, who was grieving on the ground, and said, "Aunt Xia, everything is over." Xia's mother stood up, came to me, and said apologetically, "Young man, I'm sorry." I shook my head and said, "Aunt Xia, I can understand you. No one is right or wrong in this matter. You should take Uncle Xia back to the hospital first." After hearing this, Xia's mother nodded repeatedly, took out her mobile phone and called an ambulance. "It's over and it's time for us to leave." Ruohong and I walked out of the villa. She stretched and said, "Oh, it's finally over. Go home, take a shower and go to bed. It's really dangerous tonight. If Xia Yan's resentment persists, I'm afraid both Ruohong and I will die here." Fortunately, at the critical moment, Xia's mother rushed out and resolved Xia Yan's resentment. Ruohong suddenly thought of a question at this time and asked, "Where is Xia 11? I was slightly taken aback and said, "Xia 11 should have gone to Jiyuntang to find my master. Let's not worry." But I immediately realized a problem. Will Xia 11 be targeted by other evil spirits if she goes out at night? Especially that ghost thing in the sky coffin. Thinking of this, I took Ruohong and ran out of the villa area. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanba. Chapter 96. There is still some distance between here and Jiyuntang. If you want to get to Jiyuntang as quickly as possible, you must take a taxi. But it's getting so late now, where should I take a taxi? Ruohong and I could only speed up and rush towards Jiyuntang. See if you can see a taxi on the road. Perhaps it was Ruohong and I's good luck that we actually met a taxi. Not far away, a taxi parked quietly under the streetlight, and the dim light shone on the car body, creating a lonely atmosphere. Ruohong and I looked at each other, quickened our pace, and came to the taxi. Without saying a word, I opened the back door and got in. Ruohong followed closely behind. "Master, come to Jiyuntang." The driver hummed softly, then started the car and drove on the road. At this moment, my heart is extremely anxious. I regret a little why I let Xia 11 leave first. If she encounters any danger on the road, I will feel guilty. There are actually two reasons why I'm so anxious. The first reason is that she is really worried about Xia 11's safety. Secondly, it's because Xia 11 is the star of the Yangtze River. You know, the star I am looking for is Xia 11. If something happens to Xia 11, I will not be easy. I looked out the car window at the street. The street lights on both sides were slowly receding toward the back. "Master, can you drive faster? I'm a little anxious." The taxi driver ignored me and continued to concentrate on driving. I sighed, how could I meet such a calm driver? There are no pedestrians or vehicles on the road at night, so what can you do if you drive faster? However, this is many times faster than walking. Soon, the car arrived in the city. Ruohong looked at the street scene outside the window, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. Seeing her like this, I asked, "Ruohong, what's wrong?" She was still looking at the street scene outside the window, and after a while she let out a sigh. "Hey, that's a little strange." I was confused by her appearance, and followed her line of sight and looked out the car window. Outside the car window, it was pitch black, with only the faint light from the street lights on both sides of the road. Strangeness. What's strange? Wait, I seem to have overlooked something. The car has now entered the city. Although it is already early in the morning, the city cannot be so quiet. The shops on both sides of the road should also be open 24 hours a day. In addition to the shops, there are also some vending machines that also emit a weak cold light. But why can't I see any other light except the light from the street lights now? Weird, really weird. Ruo Hung glanced at me, and immediately our eyes were on the driver at the same time. Because I was anxious just now, I didn't look at the driver carefully. But now when I look at it, I suddenly have an indescribable feeling lingering in my heart. I can't see the driver's true face from this angle, but I can see the driver's profile through the front view mirror. The driver was wearing a peaked cap, and his side face was as pale as marble. Apart from these, the driver also gave me a very unnatural feeling. Ruo Hung stretched out her hand, grabbed the passenger's back seat, and stood up to see more clearly. However, something strange happened. Ruo Hung's long nails were embedded in the passenger seat. Ruo Hung was stunned and pulled out her nails. When I saw all this, I broke out in a cold sweat. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 97. Ruo Hung's unintentional move just now poked a hole in the passenger seat. And through the small hole, I could vaguely see the small straws scattered inside. I have never seen straw used to make the inner bracket of a car seat. I stretched out my hand and touched around the small hole. Why did this touch feel familiar? I stretched out my fingers, gently pinched the edge of the small hole, and then applied a little force. I heard a tearing sound, and I actually tore off a piece of the car seat. I instantly knew what this was. This is actually paper. The car seat in front of me is actually made of paper. Seeing this scene, Ruo Hung stretched out her long nails and stabbed towards the car seat again. Not surprisingly, Ruo Hung's long nails sank into the car seat again. The two of us looked at each other, and the same thought came to our minds at the same time. This is a paper car. How can this be? How can a car made of paper get on the road? Ruo Hung glanced at the driver and opened her mouth, but no sound came out. But I could read her lips. She said 3 words to me. Paper maker. My brain buzzed, and I instantly knew what was going on. The car we are riding in now was made by a paper maker. I have seen the skills of the paper tie maker before. Those are the 2 golden girls whom Mr. Pan imprisoned. The 2 golden boys and girls were not only able to move, but were also extremely strong. At that time, I almost died in the hands of those boys. Is it possible that Mr. Pan did all this again? This shouldn't be the case. Wasn't Mr. Pan injured by Su Tianxian? Why did it come back so quickly? Before I could think about the cause and effect of the whole thing, Ruo Hung patted me on the shoulder and made a gesture of wiping my neck. What she meant was to strike first and subdue the driver. To be honest, I really admire Ruo Hung. She is surprisingly calm no matter what time, and she is also extremely thoughtful and able to make decisions in the shortest possible time. I nodded and held the peachwood sword in my hand. Whether the driver is a human or a ghost, I don't know. But I can be sure of one thing, that is, this driver is not a good person. How could an ordinary person drive a car made of paper? Using Jingxiao in a small car is an unwise choice, but it is also the most direct choice. Regardless of whether he is a human or a ghost, you can see the difference immediately with one strike of the sword. I suddenly raised the Jingxiao in my hand and stabbed the driver in the head. There was just a pop, and the driver's head was filled with surprise, but the driver didn't even let out a scream. I frowned. This driver is also a paper man. Jingxiao's pure yang energy directly set the driver's head on fire. Seeing this scene, I quickly took out my breath. I saw the driver slowly turning his head, half of his face was covered by the fire, and the remaining eye looked at me coldly. His mouth was only half open, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, giving me a sinister smile. I felt a chill in my heart, and had a vague feeling that something was about to happen. Sure enough, the whole car flew forward like an arrow from the string. I was shocked. Where was he taking us? The hot flames mercilessly burned the driver's body, which was covered with paper, and the car seat also caught fire. Ruo Hung kicked the car door open and planned to jump out. I quickly stopped her and said, "No. The car is going too fast. If you jump off, it will break. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 98. The speed is indeed too fast. And there are no vehicles or pedestrians on the entire road. The paper car is like a wild horse galloping on the road. Then what should we do? Ruo Hung asked anxiously. What to do now, I don't know. In this case, there is no way to stop the out-of-control car. The most terrible thing is that the flames burning on the driver's body have spread to the entire front row. It won't take long for it to burn to the back row. The fate that awaits Ruo Hung and me is either to be thrown to death or to be burned to death. I focused my gaze on the bushes on either side of the road. An idea instantly came to mind. I quickly said, "Jump out of the car and jump into the bushes. This is the only way right now. The bushes on the roadside should be able to slow down the force of the jump and prevent the two of us from being injured." Ruo Hung nodded very seriously, but what she said next made me break my guard instantly. "You jump, you jump." The corners of my mouth twitched slightly, and I couldn't hold it back anymore, so I said, "Sister. What time has it been? Are you still in the mood to joke? Dance now." Ruo Hung stuck out her tongue. I didn't expect Ruo Hung to be so good. Ruo Hung straightened up, saw the opportunity and jumped out. She plunged into the bushes nearby, and she didn't know whether she was injured. Just after she finished jumping, I arched my body and prepared to take off. Just as I was about to jump out, I felt my ankles being grabbed tightly. I looked back and was shocked. The person grabbing me was none other than the driver, who was almost burned out. The driver's body was burning with fire, except for his right hand. And he used his remaining right hand to hold my ankle tightly. I calmed down and kicked hard, but the paper driver still held my ankle tightly. I drew my mahogany sword and cut off his arm directly, but when I looked at the roadside, I found that there were no bushes anymore. This is bad. After just a short delay, I missed the best opportunity to jump out of the car. The paper car drove into the bridge. Looking at the rolling river not far away, I felt anxious, arched my body and jumped. I swear this jump took all my strength. I crossed the guardrail and descended rapidly towards the river. I closed my eyes subconsciously, and with a splash I was submerged into the cold river water, and there was no sound in my ears. I adjusted my posture and swam towards the river. With my efforts, my head finally came out of the river. I gasped for air. The cold river water kept stimulating my brain. I took a deep breath and swam towards the shore. Fortunately I can swim, otherwise it would be terrible. After landing, I sat on the ground and gasped for air. I looked up at the guardrail on the bridge, and I couldn't help but feel a little scared. If I had used less strength just now, I might have hit the guardrail head-on and died without knowing how. When I looked again, the paper car had disappeared. I rested for a while, stood up, and walked towards the road. Because I was soaked all over and the biting night wind blew, I couldn't help but tremble. Not long after I left, I heard someone calling my name again in front of me. I stopped and was slightly startled. I carefully identified the voice calling me. It was Ruo Hung. Ruo Hung hurriedly ran out of the darkness. When I saw Ruo Hung safe and sound, I breathed a long sigh of relief. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 99. Lusu. Are you okay? Ruo Hung stepped forward anxiously and asked. I shook my head and said, it's okay. How are you? Ruo Hung also shook her head and replied, I'm fine too. Since Ruo Hung is fine, that's good. Now our location is not far from Jiyuntang. If you quicken your pace, you should be able to get back to Jiyuntang in less than 5 minutes. Let's go quickly. I said to Ruo Hung. Ruo Hung nodded and followed me. The two of us entered a forest and had to pass through the trees if we wanted to get back on the road. I walked slowly and walked side by side with Ruo Hung. I looked at Ruo Hung and said casually, "It was really too dangerous just now. If it had been a little later, we might all have died in the car." Ruo Hung nodded in agreement. My legs couldn't stop shaking because of the cold, so my walking speed was relatively slow. Soon, I was left behind by Ruo Hung. Seeing that I was walking so slowly, Ruo Hung stopped and said, "Lu Su, what's wrong with you? Walk faster. We have to save Xia 11. I raised a wry smile at the corner of my mouth and said to Ruo Hung, "You should walk faster, my legs are a little numb." Ruo Hung was slightly startled, nodded, and moved on. I kept a certain distance from Ruo Hung. I watched Ruo Hung walk farther and quickened my pace. Ruo Hung also slowed down to take care of my physical condition. Just when I was about to catch up with Ruo Hung, I suddenly pulled out the Jingxiao behind me and slashed at Ruo Hung's fair neck. Ruo Hung seemed to feel something and stepped away from me. She was overwhelmed by my sudden move. She asked angrily, "Lu Su, what do you want to do?" I looked at Ruo Hung coldly and said, "You are not Ruo Hung, who are you?" Ruo Hung was stunned and said with a smile, "Lu Su, your head is broken, right? How could I not be Ruo Hung?" I still looked at Ruo Hung coldly and said word by word, "You are not Ruo Hung, who are you?" The person in front of me is definitely not Ruo Hung. Because if Hong jumped out of the car and jumped into the bushes, his clothes would not be so neat. Also, the distance between me and Ruo Hung has been widened, and it is impossible for Ruo Hung to rush to me in such a short period of time. So the person in front of me is definitely not Ruo Hung. Ruo Hung still wanted to explain, so I directly raised the Jingxiao in my hand and struck her again. Ruo Hung's face turned cold, and he dodged again. She looked at me coldly, her eyes filled with resentment. "How did you find me?" I described the inference I just made and the Ruo Hung in front of me. Ruo Hung laughed after hearing this. "Lu Su. Lu Su. I didn't expect you to be so cautious." I kept a certain distance from Ruo Hung. I looked at Ruo Hung and said, "You don't have to pretend, I know who you are." Ruo Hung snorted, looked at me with interest and asked, "Then who do you think I am?" I slowly said 3 words. "Painted skin ghost." Ruo Hung laughed loudly, the skin on her face began to fall off, and her body shape also changed dramatically. After a moment, a ferocious monster with a blue face and fangs came into my eyes. "Boy, you are very powerful." The painted skin ghost changed the topic and said, "Since you know who I am, what's the use?" Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 100. Painted skin ghost was right. Even if I now know his true identity, it will have no effect. Because I cannot fight against this powerful painted skin ghost with my own strength. Painted skin ghost gives me the feeling that it is many times more powerful than Suluo and Xia Yan. With my strength, it would be difficult to escape from his hands. I originally wanted to sneak attack painted skin ghost. But he was too cautious, and he dodged both attacks. Now how to do? Delay time, wait until Ruo Hung comes and I will deal with the painted skin ghost together? But if Ruo Hung comes, can we deal with him with our strength? I looked at painted skin ghost coldly and asked, "What exactly do you want to do? I have no enmity with you, so why are you pushing me so hard? This is what I can't understand the most. I don't seem to have any grudges against painted skin ghost, right?" A look of ridicule appeared on the painted skin ghost's ugly face. He opened his mouth wide and let out an intoxicating laugh. "Ha ha ha. No grievance or enmity. You destroyed Xia Jingming's body. Are you telling me that there is no grievance or enmity?" I suddenly remembered what Xiang Yi said to me. Painted skin ghost and Xia Jingming have a close relationship. As for what the connection is, I need to explore it myself. But it's useless to say anything now, because Painted Skin Ghost is approaching me. I held Jingxiao and slashed at the Painted Skin Ghost again. Painted Skin Ghost ducked and dodged again. He is huge and can move so quickly. However, he seemed a little afraid of Jingxiao in my hand. Like me getting close but not daring to attack. Painted Skin Ghost glanced at Jingxiao in my hand, and then said, "It is a good sword, but it is useless in your hands." I can't deny what he said. Jingxiao is indeed a good sword. But it doesn't work at all in my hands. If the holder is Su Tianxian, he will definitely be able to block gods and kill gods, and Buddhas to block Buddhas. I didn't answer Painted Skin Ghost. Now I was just thinking about how to get out. Painted Skin Ghost continued to approach me, and I backed away step by step. He seemed to have thought of something, his expression suddenly turned extremely ferocious, his figure flashed, and he disappeared instantly. I looked around vigilantly for fear that he would suddenly appear from somewhere and give me a fatal blow. Suddenly, a strong wind roared behind me. I condensed my expression, turned around suddenly, and saw the painted-skinned ghost opening its bloody mouth and biting me. I placed the Jingxiao in front of me, but the bloody mouth did not fall. Before I could react, I felt a hard slap on my wrist. The Jingxiao in his hand fell to the ground instantly. I was shocked. The painted skin ghost's target from the beginning was not me, but Jingxiao in my hand. I covered my right wrist and stepped back. The painted skin ghost is exactly as Xiang Yi said, insidious and cunning. I kept a certain distance from painted skin ghost. Holding the seal of the 9 layers of Thunder Ju in his hand, he silently recited the mantra in his heart. There were bursts of thunder in the air, and thunder and lightning flashed in the palm of his right hand. The painted skin ghost laughed wildly when he saw me performing the 9 layers of thunder technique. Ha ha ha. Boy, do you really think that the thing in your hand can hurt me? Are you too naive? I looked at painted skin ghost coldly and said nothing. It's impossible to run away today, so you can only choose to fight hard. But fighting hard is just fighting hard. Ben and I can't defeat painted skin ghost. A ferocious smile appeared on the ugly face of the painted skin ghost, and suddenly a sinister wind surged around him, and he rushed towards me.